Hello and welcome to Telewizja Republika. That's a nice HIMARS. We're here to dive into the latest info on the front lines of Ukraine's war and fight against Russian aggression. Today, we're focusing on a crucial update surrounding new weapon deliveries to Ukraine, a topic that has been front and center in recent news. The situation in Kyiv remains tense, as we know, but it seems that it's manageable, despite Russia's mounting offensive in the border areas near the northeastern city. Ukrainian Security Council Chief Alexander Litvinenko assures there is no imminent threat of a ground assault on Kyiv itself. However, with approximately 50,000 Russian troops amassed at the border and 30,000 involved in the current offensive, vigilance is paramount. Litvinenko's insight suggests that Russia's strategy is likely to create a buffer zone to limit Ukrainian counterattacks into Russian territory rather than to capture Kharkiv outright. This approach includes intensified mining operations, adding another layer of complexity to the conflict. Against this backdrop, significant developments are unfolding on the international front. U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan announced the imminent arrival of a major U.S. military aid package in Ukraine. This aid, promised on May 10th, includes a wide array of weaponry aimed at bolstering Ukraine's defenses and reversing recent Russian advances. After months of political stalemate, as we know, in the U.S. Congress, a $61 billion package has been approved, marking a pivotal moment in Ukraine's resistance against the notorious war criminal Vladimir Putin. As we talk, Anthony Blinken, U.S. Secretary of State, visited Kyiv today to reaffirm America's unwavering support. Blinken's arrival coincides with the development and deployment of crucial military resources, including air defense interceptors, artillery, and much anticipated ATACMS long-range precision-guided missiles. Well, we are still waiting for approval and allowance for Ukraine to hit Russian targets, as Russia is allowed de facto to attack targets within Ukrainian territory. These additions are expected to significantly enhance Ukraine's defensive and offensive capabilities. During his meeting with President Volodymyr Zelensky, Blinken emphasized the importance of these deliveries, expressing hope that they would enable Ukraine to regain the military initiative. Interestingly, amidst these developments, Ukrainian forces have reportedly conducted successful missile strikes against a Russian air defense base in occupied Crimea. Could these strikes have been carried out with the newly arrived U.S. long-range ordnance? It's a question worth pondering as the dynamics on the battlefield continue to evolve. Blinken's visit underscored the critical nature of the support, especially as Ukraine faces heightened challenges in Kharkiv and other eastern regions. President Zelensky expressed deep gratitude for the bipartisan support in the U.S. Congress and highlighted the urgent need for continued and expedited weapon deliveries. Blinken's words echoed this statement, acknowledging Ukraine's resilience and the pressing need for sustained military assistance to fend off Russian attacks and maintain territorial integrity of Ukraine. As we continue to monitor these things, the ongoing delivery weapons and support not only bolsters Ukraine's immediate defensive capabilities, but also sends a strong message of global solidarity against Russian aggression, solidarity that we are partly and proudly part of. You can join us on rackracon.com, that's our website. You can leave us your email. We'll get back to you with our reports from the front line, not only the Russian aggression against Ukraine, but also other front lines of the ongoing war against the Western civilization. My name is Michał Rachon. This is Rackracon. and we roll in.
Are you ready? 3, 2, 1, go!
Joe Lindsley is again on Televizja Republika, back with us. Joe, great to see you on Rachon. Joe, let's start with the things that are going on the top of the Kremlin power structure. What is being said, and does it have any significance from the perspective of someone like you who is in Ukraine, that basically Putin changed the top echelons of Ministry of Defense? He fired or moved to another position Nikolai Patrushev, infamous number 2 Secret Service man, KGB man, who was actually the mastermind behind all the most known crimes of Putin's regime.
Well, Michal, hello from Lviv, Ukraine. And as always, with anything that happens from Russia or from the Kremlin, I'm skeptical. I'm skeptical in 2 ways. One, I always look at how does big news from Russia obscure other stories that could be reported. We see this time and time again. We saw this with the death of Alexander Navalny during the week. Was the 10-year anniversary of Ukraine's Maidan Revolution and the 2-year anniversary of Ukraine's resistance against Russia's full-scale aggression. We saw Russia make up this story, as far as we can tell, that there were 65 Ukrainian POWs on one of the 3 very powerful planes that Ukraine shot down in 1 week in January. So time and time again, the Russians are very smart at playing this news cycle. They don't have freedom of press there, so they can kind of say whatever they want. I talked to, different people in Ukraine had different opinions on this, but I think it's all sort of kind of useless speculation. I mean, there's not, unless we have some honest reporters that we trust in Moscow with sources in the Kremlin, I don't think we should make too much of it. I think we should just pay attention to it and see, and there's another story in this category, which is what happened on Sunday morning in Belgorod, that city, the closest Russian city to Kyiv region and to Kyiv city. An apartment building blew up, and the Russians said that Ukrainians hit it with a missile, but you could look at hundreds of videos of this online, and clearly the explosion came from within, from below. And that had many people here talking about what happened in that Moscow suburb in 1999 when an apartment building was blown up, and as Putin was climbing his way to power.
Yeah, actually, that was one of the first operations that the world heard. The public opinion worldwide heard the name of Nikolai Patrushev, who was apparently responsible for those basically terrorist attacks against Russia's own citizens. One can look at the photographs from 1999 and take a look at what we could see in Volgograd, or in Ryazan, or in Volgodonsk, where those things happen, and take a look at those recent photos from Belgorod, and we can see obviously some similarities. That's pretty obvious, yeah. The reason back then in '99 was to blame Chechens and to justify terroristic attack against Chechens. Now it's pretty the same pattern, and that brings me to the question and to the issue of what is going on around the Kyiv, because we see reports about the activity of Russian forces, but again, nothing new. We've heard about this activity for more than 2 years now.
Well, and yeah, first, and maybe if I could say this first, because as a reporter, keenly, I report every single day on American radio about what's happening in Ukraine. And I see in my personal reporting how easy it is to fall into Russia's narrative control. They're very good at getting us, even if I think Russia even likes it when we criticize Russia, as long as we're talking about what Moscow. Because
we still talk about the talking points that they try to.
And so, if I might, because I'm here in Lviv reporting, I purposely returned here to Lviv last week. For the Easter holidays, the Greek Catholics here, they're part of the Roman Catholic Church. It's probably the most religious part of Ukraine. The story gets missed, but it's called Greek Catholicism. And they celebrate the Easter holiday in such a traditional way that it's not like a spectator sport. Everyone participates. And it's very important because I think you look at a lot of conservative Americans, they miss, people who you think would love Ukrainian culture, and they're the biggest voices against Ukraine. And everything I see around me in Lviv is the very type of society that they wish for. I see many people complaining about the paganism at Eurovision and the Irish, screaming demons or whatever. But look at Ukraine's song at Eurovision. It was a song about Mother Teresa and the Virgin Mary. And very interesting that it's the very nation at war that did not have an angry, decadent Eurovision song, but something about faith and hope and endurance. And that's what I see around me in Ukraine every day. And even now, a week after the Easter celebration, when you go to any cafe or coffee shop or a bar or anything in Lviv, the way people say hello is Christos Voskres, which means Christ is risen. That's literally what they're saying here. And I think it's very important that this part of the story is not missed. This is exactly what is under threat right now. And not only in Lviv, Lviv during Soviet times really preserved the church had to go underground, but they kept these traditions alive. But what's very interesting, and what I've seen in all my travels to Kharkiv, there in the east, the other side of this country, there is such a renaissance of Ukrainian culture and language and traditions in Kharkiv, and in a way that you don't see in the middle of the country. You see it here in Lviv, and you see it in Kharkiv, because in Kharkiv, they're so heavily pummeled by Russia, and they go through hell every day that they have to find the true things to hold on to. And they've really, Kharkiv, people are speaking Ukrainian. They're in touch with their roots and traditions. And so here in that city, the Russians are sending, in addition to what's happening, which we'll discuss on the border, about 15 miles from the edge of the city, the Russians have gained territory. But they've also been sending missiles to the city, as they have for 2 years now. But it's gotten very intense once again. For example, I have a friend in Kharkiv. He and his wife had a baby the other day, and missiles hit near that maternity hospital all the time. And they stayed there. They didn't flee. This is this insane belief in freedom and belief in staying in their home place. And today, when Secretary Blinken came to Kyiv, President Zelensky was very clear. And this is a campaign that people in Kharkiv have pushed for a long time. He had a very simple request from Washington. One of the best things that can be done now is to get 2 Patriot missile batteries to Kharkiv city. Because when the Patriot missile batteries arrived in Kyiv, Kyiv almost has an iron dome, like much of Israel does. Kyiv is very well protected from Russian attacks because of that Patriot system. If you got that system to Kharkiv, you could begin to protect this city that is so vulnerable, and yet no one is running away. Even though, I just imagine to still be living a life in your city when the Russians now, they've crossed the border and they're 15 miles from the edge of the city. And as I look at what's happening in the border, it's very murky. It's hard to know exactly what's happening. I talk with people who are there, and I even get different stories. I get, a lot of that depends on people's nature. Are you more of a pessimist or an optimist?
But that's very interesting, Joe, because on the other hand, if we had a clear scenario, clear situation over there, you wouldn't have this kind of different views on the things that are going on the front line. After all, it's pretty simple. Either Russians go through, advance, gain territory, or no. If you got the contradictory claims and things from the people who are over there, it means that this is not the thing that we that we may think based on the official claims and even those official or half-official reports.
Exactly, and this question is, is the Kremlin? The Kremlin has said for a long time, and their puppets have said that they want Kharkiv city. Perhaps they still delusionally believe that. So, is this a sincere, an actual attempt to invade, or is it a distraction to take Ukrainian resources away from other places? We don't know. We have to keep these things in mind. But the Russians have gained about 5 miles of territory. They're 5 miles now within Ukrainian territory. And I think one of the first things to look at here, how do we get to this point? Because as I look at villages, and I know people that are going to evacuate Ukrainians from these villages, I visited some of these places in 2022 after the liberation of Kharkiv region. These places were already liberated. A lot of money, a lot of resources, a lot of lives got them liberated in 2022. And because it took so long to get additional ammunition, and especially because Washington has refused still to give Ukraine permission to use Western weapons, American weapons, to hit targets on Russian soil. So the Russians were able to amass troops there, and Ukrainians couldn't use any of these American tools until the Russians crossed the border. So that's part of the reason why we're in this situation. I think internally there's some other difficulties. I mean, Ukraine did change the commander of the military forces for Kharkiv. I have heard some criticism that maybe they weren't prepared and maybe the defense barriers were not properly designed. There's a lot, obviously there can be a lot of questions on all sides, but one of the key things is as long as you are not able to use these amazing weapons in the West to attack anything on Russian soil, you will forever be a sitting duck in that Kharkiv region. And we do see that, I mean, the Russians have, again, it's about 5 miles of territory they've taken. And it's, I know the fighting is extremely difficult and intense. In fact, one group of fighters in Kharkiv region that through our watchers here, viewers, we were going to get them some tire repair equipment. And now we're not because, well, they don't seem to be there anymore. So it's a very difficult situation that we're facing right now at the border.
Joe, what is the message that Anthony Blinken is coming to Kyiv with? Because we know that there are a couple of issues. The Ukrainian aid bill that finally passed through the American Parliament. We got also claims that we are close to delivering F-16s to Ukraine. What is the main message, the main reason for which Blinken visits Kyiv now?
Well, today the Prime Minister of Denmark said that within a month, the F-16s donated by the Kingdom of Denmark will be here. Of course, they needed American permission for that. And, a lot of people thought that these would never arrive. Maybe they will. There's already rumors in Ukraine that they already have arrived, but it doesn't seem so. Anthony Blinken's message in Kyiv, I think we have anyone that watches that, you have to ask yourself, what is the message? Had he traveled to Kharkiv, that would have been a message. It would have been very clear. The main thing, that I know I could take away from that visit of Blinken to Kyiv is that he wants to show, he's in a very safe, protected city because of the Patriot defense system. Kyiv is safe, and you hear loud noises, but it's safe. And he went there to show, some kind of solidarity with President Zelensky, while in the East, problems are not being solved. And that's why President Zelensky was very clear in his meeting with Secretary Blinken. This is the first time I think he sort of challenged him very publicly on this. They need, at the minimum, 2 Patriot defense systems. And beyond that, it would be nice to have an ability to attack targets on Russian soil. And so I think we're still dealing with this question that maybe people don't want to answer or deal with in the West and Washington. And we look at, I was in Kharkiv the day that the liberation began of that region. And, all those gains, all that progress, and I've seen Kharkiv come back to life as a city. And for all these American investments and Western investments and Ukrainian blood, now, because stuff wasn't sent on time and there weren't permissions to actually hit these Russian targets, now it's going to all be lost. And I think that gives a very heavy mood to people throughout Ukraine. Saying, the politicians always like to talk a big game. What are they actually doing? Do they actually believe that, do they actually want Ukraine to win? And then when we see that the U.S. Treasury Department continues to waive sanctions on, I think it's about a dozen Russian banks, maybe it's 10 Russian banks, because for the very reason because they do business with oil and gas. That's why that's why the U.S. Treasury waives the sanctions on the most vital and important industry to Russia. Because they're, I guess, so afraid of gas prices rising. As long as stuff like that continues, how can you actually win against an enemy that actually has made it very clear they want to destroy free people, starting with Ukrainians?
Joe, you in a way sound very pessimistic. Basically, the things that we are talking about, and we continue to watch this Russian invasion unfolding, but the things that are going on around Kharkiv, no matter if that's or that's not the thing that Russia wants us to talk about, I feel a different approach of yours to what is going on right now. Does it mean that the mood changed also among the people who are who are victims of this Russian invasion in a way?
I would say, I look at the city of Kharkiv. People were very hurt and sad by what's been happening there. Even though they've already gone through so much hell, it's very painful. But I don't see them running away. In fact, so many people I know were running to the border to help evacuate people in those villages and bring them to the city. Kharkiv city is still incredibly strong, and there's not a doubt, I think, for anyone who knows that city that it would that the Russians could occupy it. I mean, it's armed to the teeth. I probably can't repeat it on TV, but the phrase about Putin that you hear everyone, even kids in Ukraine, say, that originated in Kharkiv from the football hooligans in 2014, when with no army they defended their city. So there's no question that there's no possibility, I think, in anyone's mind that the Russians could be in that city. But what the Russians are doing is sending bombs and missiles upon that city in increased intensity. And so much so that every single person I know there has had a very close call in the past week. So that's a problem, and that's why Zelensky is calling for the Patriot defense. But we do see, I mean, the situation at the border, and that could spring up in other places, even in Donbass and other places, is very tenuous and difficult. A lot of people have a lot of questions about decisions made here, but also especially, it's been clear, is there the will? We had all the grandstanding when there was a bipartisan bill passed several weeks ago. And even, Washington very strangely made it very public how many weapons would be flooding into Ukraine.
This is another thing, because it took some time. It's not that it all happened yesterday or the day before yesterday. We know that there's a time frame needed for the armed deliveries to actually arrive at the front line. But we are several weeks after the decisions being made. Do you know anything about the real-time effects of unlocking this Ukrainian support bill in Washington, D.C.? Did any significant weapons arrive at the front line to the Ukrainian trucks supporting the frontline effort of the soldiers?
Well, we had evidence the week that the bipartisan support passed. Washington, the White House had used its authority, which it doesn't use very often, to send weapons on its own. They had promised those weapons in February, the long-range, medium-range ATACMS, and they arrived right as Washington was trying to pass that legislation because it was already promised. And Ukrainians used those pretty much immediately to hit Russian targets in the Crimean Peninsula. And by the way, we're still seeing successes there. Just a couple of days ago, Ukrainians took out a major radar station in the Crimean Peninsula. And so we are seeing, perhaps it seems to be, maybe these ATACMS are playing a role in that. Maybe it was 3 weeks ago, we were talking about Odessa every day. The Russians were sending Iskander missiles upon Odessa in a very intense way. That has calmed down. Some people speculate that calming is a result of Ukraine's ability to hit targets in the Crimean Peninsula, which the White House has given Ukraine permission to do at last, to hit targets in occupied Crimea. So we do see a change there. And so while we see a calming in Odessa, there's still attacks there and such, and there's still drones. But while we see a calming there, we see this intensification in Kharkiv. We've had a few reports of, positions in occupied Ukrainian soil that the Ukrainians must have used these new weapons to take out Russian training grounds and other such places. We've had a few indications, but so far we don't see anything extraordinary. And even then, we still there is the sticking point is this. Can Ukrainians use, say, an ATACMS to hit these invading Russians as they come in from Belgorod before they enter Ukraine?
Yeah, just in a way, it pisses me off because we are asking the same questions. 2 years. Will Ukrainians be allowed to do it or no? We know that the only way to do this kind of things is not to ask questions, not to ask for permission because you won't get it anyway. Just destroy what you can destroy, and the world will applaud, at least the civilized world. Joe, we got 1 minute, so this is your time for fundraising.
Yeah, great. And one of our units sent us this. There we go. A nice banner signed by some of the guys for the gifts we brought, including night visions. One of the comments there says in Ukrainian, "Fear God and fear the warriors of Chernihiv." So it's nice to get these tokens of appreciation, knowing that those supplies are helping the guys at the front. We welcome support at UkrainianFreedomNews.com. Now we're trying to buy. Mainly it's still drone jamming equipment and night visions and Motorola walkie-talkie systems. And unfortunately, we have some extra money to spend because those guys we were going to get the tire repair kit to. Their unit took heavy losses. But We welcome any support. I mean, everyone I know in Ukraine is raising money right now in a newfound energy to help all the guys at the front in any way possible and to help evacuate people. So we'll put that support to good use at ukrainianfreedomnews.com. Thank you.
You can find all the information on the website that Joe just mentioned. You can find also Joe on his Twitter, on his Substack. We strongly recommend following Joe Lindsley with his reports from Ukraine, because Joe is there for almost 3 years, since the day #1 of this ongoing Russian war against civilized world. Actually, the war against the whole Western civilization, and Joe is reporting the Ukrainian part of this defense line against orcs coming from Moscow. Joe, thanks a lot. See you soon.
Yeah, dziękuję. Until next week. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, you can join us on rackracon.com. That's our website. You can leave us your email. We'll get back to you with our reports and our thoughts about the ongoing war against the Western civilization. We see each other tomorrow. We are having a special guest tomorrow because there's a new book about the Putin's reality, not only on the territories where the actual war is going on, like Ukraine right now, but we do have an information war all around the world, and we do have at least a couple of things that happened and that were caused by Putin and his regime. And we are going to talk about it tomorrow, because new book just emerged on market in Europe. And we're going to talk with the author of this book. But who is it going to be? That's a little surprise for Racon viewers. See you soon. Actually, tomorrow. Ciao. Bye-bye.